Hello, my little ones. Today is December 8th, so it's our 8th story. And this one really is my favorite. The Other Wise Man by Henry Van Dyke. You've heard the story about the three wise men who went to Jesus and gave him their treasures. Well, this is the story of the fourth wise man. His name was Artaban. He was a magi, which means he had been trained as a philosopher, as a scriptorian, as a physician, as an astronomer. He was very, very wise, which is why he was called a wise man. He and his fellow magi had been studying the scriptures, and they had found in the ancient texts of the Hebrews that there was a prophecy that a king was going to be born. But not just a regular old king. This was a special king, the king of the Jews, but he was also the king of the whole world. And there was a prophecy that a sign would be given when he was born. There was going to be a new star in the heavens, beautiful and bright. As they studied, they discovered that the time was short, as coming when the king was going to be born. So he and his fellow magi's had made an agreement. He would watch from his home in Persia. They would watch from their homes. And when the star was given, they would all travel to Babylon and meet there. And then together they would follow the star and go and worship the king. Artaban had sold everything he owned so that he could buy gifts to give to the king. He had bought 3 jewels. A sapphire as blue as the blue sky, a ruby red as a drop of blood, and a pearl white as a snow-capped mountain. Artaban was going to give these to the king when he found him. On the night when he thought the sign was going to be given, Artaban invited some of his magi friends to come, and they were on the roof of his house, and he was explaining to them about the quest he was going to take. He told them all about the quest, about Jesus, about the king who was going to be born, and he invited them to join him. But each of them said, "Oh, this is silly. No, there's no king going to come to the Jews. You're wasting your time." Finally, all of them had left except for his oldest friend, who told him, "Artaban, I wish I could go with you, but I'm too old to make such a long journey." Sometimes the most important journeys have to be made on your own. And then he too left, and Artaban was on top of his roof alone, watching the sky. As the stars crossed in the heaven, 2 of them passed, and a spark was born underneath them, a brand new star. It was beautiful and brilliant, and Artaban knew it was the sign. The king had been born. So quickly he went down to the stables where his horse was already saddled and ready for him, and he got on the horse and he began his journey. It was 10 days for him to get to Babylon, and his friends had agreed they would wait just 10 days before they left to go and find the king. So every day he rode as hard as he could, until on the evening of the 10th day he could see in the distance the city of Babylon, and he was almost there. But as he was riding his horse down through a little dip in the road, the horse shied and reared back like it was afraid of something. So Artaban stopped, and he got off the horse to see what in the world was wrong. And there, laying by a shallow creek, was a man. He was very sick. Artaban could tell by his poor clothing that he was one of the beggar people that lived in Babylon this time of the year. And he also knew that he had the dreaded fever that happened to the poor people. Now, being trained as a physician, Artaban knew if this man didn't get help, he was going to die. But Artaban also knew that he needed to get to cross Babylon to meet his friends. They'd already waited the 10 days. They wouldn't wait any longer. So he turned around and he started to get on his horse when the poor man moaned and reached out and grabbed the hold of Artaban's robe and held on to it. And Artaban looked back at the sick man, and he thought, "Can I leave a dead man or a sick man to die? I can't." So he took off his robes and he knelt down by the sick man and started to try to make him well. All night he worked over the man. He brought some herbs that he had brought with him and mixed them with water and gave to him. He mopped his forehead and tried to make the fever go away. Finally, just as it was beginning to get light, the fever broke, and Artaban knew the man was going to get well. Then he left with him what he had left of his provisions. It wasn't much, but a little wine and a little bread. And then he got on his horse, and as fast as he could, he raced through the city streets of Babylon. Of course, no one was up. It was early in the morning. By the time he got to the place where everybody was going to meet, it was empty. Nobody was there. There was just a piece of parchment fluttering in the breeze that was stuck to one of the trees. Artaban went and he took it down and he read it. And it said, Artaban, we have waited past midnight on the 10th day. We don't dare wait any longer. The sign might be gone. If you come, follow us across the desert. Then Artaban sank to his knees and he thought, follow them across the desert? How can I do that? My horse is spent. I have no provisions. I can't cross the desert. Oh God, forgive me. I wasted the time. I should have been searching for the king to help a sick man. Well, Artaban did the only thing he could do. He went back into Babylon and he sold his beautiful ruby to buy camels and provisions and food. And then he did follow the other wise men. He followed the star and they went across the desert. Finally, he reached, the star led him to a little tiny town called Bethlehem. When he got to outside of Bethlehem, he got off his camel and he left all of his other camels outside and he went walking through the streets of Bethlehem. It seemed strangely quiet. Finally, he saw a young woman standing in the doorway of one of the houses, and she was holding a little baby. And he went up to her and he said, do you know why is it so quiet? Where's everybody? And the woman said, oh, there's a rumor that Herod is sending his soldiers and they're going to exact a new tax. And so all the men have taken the flocks and they've gone up into the hills to hide. And Artaban asked her, well, have you heard anything about a king who was going to be born here? Or 3 wise men who came to worship him? And the girl said, oh yes, the wise men came and they brought their gifts to Mary and Joseph and gave them to the baby Jesus. And then they disappeared as mysteriously as they came. Mary and Joseph are also gone. There's a rumor that they've gone to Egypt. As they were standing outside talking, all of a sudden they began to hear a noise down the street. They could hear people marching, men marching, soldiers coming, and then the women began to scream, and they shouted, they're killing the babies. The soldiers of Herod are killing the babies. The young mother quick grabbed her little baby and she said, oh, please, don't let them take my baby. And she ran into the back of her house to hide. Artaban stood in the doorway and he watched as the soldiers marched down the street, their swords dripping with blood. When they got to his door, the captain of the guard said, move aside, let us come in. Artaban didn't move. He just stood quietly and still. Only his hand moved as it reached inside the folds of his robe. And he took it out and he held it open. And he said, this ruby is for the prudent captain who knows there are no children in this house. Well, greedily, the captain of the guard snatched the ruby and he ordered his men, march on down the road. There are no babies in this house. Then Artaban's shoulders slumped and he sobbed, oh, Lord, forgive me. I've wasted again the present, the gift I was going to give the king to help a baby. But in the back of the house, the young mother was also praying. She said, oh, Lord, bless him for saving my child. Well, Artaban went to Egypt looking for the little family. He went up and down the coast. He searched and he searched. One place he found an old rabbi who told him, don't look for the king in the palaces or with the rich people. Look for him in the prisons. Look for him among the poor or the sick. So Artaban did. You could have found Artaban all over. He went to the poor places. He fed the needy, the hungry. He clothed the needy. He visited the people in prison. 33 years Artaban searched for the Christ, for the king, but he never found him. 33 years. Artaban was old. His hair was white. His legs were weak. He could hardly walk, and he knew he didn't have much longer on this earth to make his quest. It was Easter time, or it was springtime, and Artaban thought, often I have heard about the king being in Jerusalem at the time of Passover. Maybe he's there. I'll try one more time to find him. So he went to Jerusalem. As he got closer to the city, he met with whole crowds of people. They were all leaving the city. They were all going out one of the gates. And he stopped a man and he said, "Where's everybody going?" And the man said, "Oh, we're going to watch the execution. They're going to crucify 3 men today. 2 of them are robbers, and one of them is a fanatic, a crazy man who the people call him the King of the Jews." The King of the Jews. How sweetly those old familiar words fell upon the tired ears of Artaban. 33 years he had searched, and maybe now, finally, was his chance to serve the king. God moves in mysterious ways, he thought. Maybe I can take my pearl, the last of my gifts, and I can give it to the king, to the soldiers, to pay for a ransom for the king. As Artaban looked at his beautiful pearl, it seemed like it had grown more beautiful and more lustrous after being close to his beating heart for all these years. But even as he was looking at it, a group of soldiers came marching past, and they were dragging a sobbing little girl behind them. When they passed Artaban, she tore herself away from the soldiers, and she threw her arms around his legs, and she cried, "Oh, save me, save me. My father was also a magi, but he's dead now, and the soldiers are taking me to sell me as a slave to pay for his debts." Artaban looked at his pearl, and he looked at the girl, and he felt that old familiar struggle, and he thought, will I fail again? Will I waste the gift that was meant for the king to help this girl? But just then the soldiers dragged her away and started marching off, and Artaban knew. He held out his hand and he said, "Daughter, here is thy ransom." Well, then the sky grew black. The earth began to tremble. The building shook. All the people ran screaming away. Artaban didn't run anywhere. He had nowhere to go. His quest was over. His search was ended. He had no more gifts to give to the king. Just then, a tile broke loose from one of the roofs nearby, and it fell and hit Artaban right on his head, and he fell down to the ground. The girl knelt down beside him to see if she could help. Artaban had a big cut on his forehead, and then she heard a sound. It was kind of like the tinkling of music. It was a voice, but she couldn't understand what it said. And then she saw Artaban's lips move, and she leaned closer to hear him, and she heard him say, "Nay, not so, Lord. When did I see thee when thou wast in prison? When did I feed thee when thou wast hungry, or take care of thee when thou wast sick? 33 years I have searched for thee, Lord, yet I have never seen thy face." Then the girl heard the voice again, but this time she understood the words. "Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me." A quiet light fell across Artaban's tired face as he took his last deep breath. His quest was over. His search was ended. His gifts had been accepted. The other wise man had found the king.